All right, folks, let's dive in. This is our second Pep Talk. Today, we're going to talk about how Peplink works with private 5G, private LTE. It's a big topic, one that's been around for a few years, but all of a sudden really making a big comeback and a really big push to a lot of different customers. And so from that side, we've got Michael Maitland joining us again. Mike has been involved with us over the years on many private LTE projects in the past, and again, he's talking to customers almost every day about this stuff. So Mike, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Travis, for having us. All right, pretty excited to get talking about private LTE. Ever since we called it CBRS, and now to the private LTE days. You know, it's been a long time coming, and we're starting to see a lot of momentum in this space. And excited to talk more about it and how Peplink plays a role.
Well, cool. We're going to jump in and really, the whole point of this is it's not easy, right? There's challenges that come up when people are looking at deploying private 5G, private LTE. And, the first thing is just how do we get all these devices connected? I think just as a basic level, a lot of folks are looking at private 5G, private LTE, not so much as a WAN technology, like a typical cellular network would be used to get to the internet, but it's more being used as a LAN technology, so often replacing or enhancing Wi-Fi. So you can think of it used very similar to Wi-Fi, but just like Wi-Fi, everybody's got to have that chip, that capability on device to connect to that network. And so, iPads, iPhones, those things have that connectivity built in, but there's lots of other devices that don't have that private 5G, private LTE connectivity capability built in. And so that's really where Peplink comes in. And it's not just about getting it connected, it's about doing it reliably 24/7, 365 in whatever environments customers are needing that in. And so, Mike, I know just at a basic level, you're talking to customers out there and hearing about people deploying these networks. What kind of things are they talking about when they kind of jump into it?
Yeah, with building out the infrastructure for private LTE, there's a lot of time planning, there's a lot of cost involved, and it's not a simple task. And when it comes to kind of the connectivity piece, that final stage where Peplink plays a role, it's all about having the trust in the product, the trust in the portfolio and technology, and really be able to handle everything you need to comfortably, because so much time and cost has been spent on it already. It makes no sense to bring in a device at that time that maybe you just have a little doubts on, or don't trust fully, or isn't all fully integrated with other pieces of your technology. So I think that's where Peplink really stands out, is they have the trust factor, they have the portfolio to provide a solution for any application in regards to private LTE, but they also have the backbone and the systems to help you manage and take care of it with a lot of with just being very confident, right? And I think that's really where Peplink stands out here.
Yeah, I think the trust is, a big thing that I've heard too. It's like you said, there's infrastructure, there's planning, there's engineering that goes into these networks, and they have a lot of great capabilities, but it's a big investment. And so, yeah, when you need to get all these other devices connected and being able to be confident that, yeah, you've got the right device, it's going to be reliable every day, every minute, every second. And it's not just something off the shelf, it's gone through testing and certification. And so
Definitely.
and that's what we bring. There's lots of different devices, there's Wi-Fi devices, there's Ethernet devices, there's serial devices. And so again, if we think about this, like if we were going to replace our Wi-Fi network in a manufacturing facility, what are the devices we need to connect? Well, there's probably some sort of barcode scanners out there. There's a lot of Wi-Fi barcode scanners. And so Peplink can be that bridge to that scanner, connected to the private LTE, the private 5G, but there's also just, Ethernet computers and terminals and all kinds of devices. But again, we go through that certification, that interoperability testing with these private 5G vendors to make sure that, we don't just have the technical specs on the data sheet, but it's actually something that's going to work reliably in a real world customer scenario.
Yeah, we just help connect anything with an IP that you need access to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep, that's a good point. Yeah, it's hard to predict what that device will be that this customer or that customer needs to connect to their private 5G network. But again, we've got that portfolio to fit in there, whether it's a mobile or a stationary or indoor or outdoor use case.
Yeah.
So with that, there's a sample of our private 5G and private 5G and private LTE lineup. So on the bottom, we've got our single radio devices. So a lot of people just need a device to get them connected. Again, maybe bridge that gap between this new private 5G network and whatever legacy Ethernet or serial or Wi-Fi device they have. So we've got a really awesome introductory device there, that BR1 Mini Cat 7. That's fully private LTE capable and tested on lots of different vendors, and it's pretty darn affordable at $349. So that's really a starting point for a lot of customers when they need just that reliable, simple device. If we look at the 5G side, we've got the BR1 Pro 5G. Again, that's a price leader for that category of product, having a rugged, reliable, always on ready 5G device. And again, all of these devices are also interoperable with the commercial network. So you can put a private SIM and a commercial SIM in there and hand off between the two. And if you want to grow that capability, then we've got the multi-radio devices. So that UBR Plus and that BR2 Pro, you can put two cards in simultaneously. So you can combine that private and commercial cellular network for different advanced use cases.
And that's really, really important to highlight, Travis. So, if you just need that basic connection, we can do that. But Peplink takes things so much further with its technology and its software, and allowing the bonding, the seamless transition from one connection to the other. Depending on the application, you may integrate Wi-Fi, you may integrate the private LTE, you may integrate the commercial LTE as well, right? And the Peplink technology really allows you to seamlessly move between those if that's the case. Or again, if it's just a private network you're trying to connect to, we work well there as well with the management and everything. But the portfolio allows you to really do and truly deploy what you need to accomplish with the multi modem devices, but the multi-WAN kind of solution that Peplink and SpeedFusion bring to the table.
Yeah, and we've seen, a lot of our partners that we're talking to in this space, they're being this expert for the end customers. They're deploying these private networks. And so for them, it's not just a one-stop solution, right? They're going to build this network for this customer, and they're going to go to another customer and build another network. And so they need that lineup. They need something more than just one device. They need that kind of ladder of options as they run into different scenarios. And so again, that's really what we bring to the table, is that consistent, reliable experience, but also the portfolio to meet the needs of each deployment, simple or complicated.
Definitely.
And the space is really heating up, and so we're full attention here, and we're trying to make this as easy as possible for customers. And so we've got a couple promotions out there right now targeting the private LTE, private 5G space. And so we've got the BR1 Mini Cat 7. And so we've got a bundle price with 3 years of prime care for $449 MSRP. And then we've got that dual radio UBR Plus, which is also capable of dual private LTE. And that's, again, a 3-year bundle at $749. So these are super affordable devices. And again, you've got that reliable vendor interoperability tested backing of these. So both great options. And even at that UBR Plus, that's a heck of a price for a dual radio. So you can start looking at all kinds of advanced situations.
True dual radio, to be able to use them at the same time. I mean, that's a price point leader, but really seeing that these are two of the more popular choices when people are looking at building out the private LTE. So Peplink went to bat and put together a good promotion for it. Getting the 3-year bundle makes it a lot easy for the deployment and the management ongoing, and getting all the capabilities that the Prime Care brings to the table across the management platform, some data pieces and SpeedFusion and bonding, along with the hardware as well. So really great offers.
These aren't, like you talked about earlier, Mike, these are big investments. These are big efforts. These aren't things that people are doing for 1 year. And so we thought that these 3-year bundles made a lot of sense. And of course, we're trying to make the price point easier to make that investment too. So yeah,
Exactly.
For partners out there to take advantage of this, all you need to do is have a valid deal registration and mention this promotion in that deal registration, so that we've got an understanding of the private LTE, private 5G scope of the project. And that's really all there is to it. So yeah, it's a promotion we've got running right now. So again, when we're deploying, when customers are deploying private 5G, private LTE, there's a lot of kind of like baseline concerns people have. They want rugged devices, they want things to work in extreme temperatures, and they want it to be easy, straightforward to deploy right out of the box. So it's scalable. And so that brings you into the management side of it, right? These aren't just one-off devices that you're going to throw out there and forget about. They're things that you need to make sure are running every day, every minute, because it's a business running underneath of that. And so that's where the management piece comes in. And again, that's another Peplink baseline capability that we bring that just really stands out around competitors. Our In Control 2 product is the cloud management service that we have. But so it does all the basic powerful cloud management things like zero touch provisioning so that you can centralize firewall and security policies and just keep tabs on what's working and what's not. But a big decision in private 5G, private LTE is how the architecture is laid out. Some customers have very focused goals inside of their building on premise. And so a lot of customers choose to deploy private 5G completely on premise, no internet connectivity. And so with Peplink, they can still have that centralized management experience in that on-premise scenario. So they can run the In Control software there. And if not, if they're using the more cloud-oriented approach, we've got our hosted platform there on the internet ready to go as well. And so Mike, I know you run into that a lot, not just in private LTE or 5G, but that ability to have the private In Control seems to be a big differentiator out there.
The number of people that need it is minimum, but when they do, it's a deal breaker, right? And the private In Control really allows a flexible deployment decision from what the customer needs and demands, and so it really is a great solution when it comes down to that. And again, it's kind of how Peplink looks at it. They want to be flexible across applications, deployments, and really be able to fit the void or fit the need of any of those, no matter what the customer is demanding or the customer needs, right? One thing I will say, kind of skipping back to that previous slide you mentioned, Travis, is the seamless integration that Peplink brings to the table with its drop-in mode and IP pass-through, different things like this that can coexist with existing network equipment and different things, make it an easy deployment as well, right? And that's something that we see a lot of times as being a big factor there, or a big positive, because you don't need to change everything. So going along with everything we mentioned on this slide, that's another big piece that really allows an easy deployment, no matter what your current infrastructure is.
Yeah, it's all about integration. I mean, at the end of the day, there's probably something already that the customer has, and we're trying to build something bigger and better. And so, yeah, the more flexible we can be with, the options we have, we're able to stay with the customer's requirements, no matter if it goes, private on premise or public in the cloud.
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
options for both, and you don't lose functionality in either scenario then. So another big piece of functionality that Peplink offers that we see a lot of interest with in the private 5G and LTE space is our new In Touch feature. So this is remote management for devices that are behind a Peplink. So we're going to go through a lot of different customer deployment scenarios and give you better detailed examples of like what people are doing with these networks. But again, video surveillance is a pretty common one on any network. And so, if you've got a private 5G network and you want to be able to log into the IP cameras behind that, again, In Touch and In Control are what gives you that capability. We've got an ambulance rolling by here, so sorry for the noise that's coming through or not, but yeah.
In Touch is a great feature. The flexibility and the ease to be able to access your devices behind the Peplink. I mean, it's just kind of getting known within the channel and their customers, and it's kind of a little different from what people are used to with their out of management solutions. But the ease of setting up, the ease of accessing, this is a great feature that Peplink added to In Control that is really a game changer. And the accessibility it just makes it so simple.
Yeah, I mean, people are deploying Peplink in private 5G networks so that they can connect some sort of device behind it, right? Whether that's a camera, a PLC, a Windows server, we don't know, right? But they're connecting those devices. And so of course they're going to want to manage those devices as well. And so this makes it so much simpler to manage those devices in those private networks. Again, whether it's, that on-prem or cloud configuration, InTouch is a feature that you can bring along with for any of those scenarios.
Just kind of shows the intuition of Peplink engineers to kind of create and bring features that really help.
Yeah, it's that feature that, once everybody sees it, that the light bulbs go off, and all of a sudden they can think of how they can make something easier in their job with that capability. And so on that note, we've got a bunch of different applications and scenarios here that we're having conversations with, or we have active deployments with customers using private 5G, private LTE. And so warehouses, and as well as the automated warehouses, where we're seeing actually automated robots doing the picking off the shelves, manufacturing, industrial sites, again, autonomous systems, or even the teleoperated systems. We see a lot of different use cases there: shipping and transportation, security, surveillance, airports, campuses, events. I mean, there's just all kinds of scenarios that people are looking at private 5G and LTE for.
Yeah, and if you just break it down into something a little more simple, any application that has a large footprint or potential interference for a Wi-Fi network not to be ideal, or high density with, or congestion, or not good cellular signal. These are the places that private 5G or private LTE really makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, people are usually either fighting with capacity because they've got so many users, right? It could be, those events types of networks, or airports, again, where there's just so many users at once that the commercial networks just can't deliver the business critical experience. And so private's an option there. But also, like you said, warehouses, things where you're more fighting, with your environment. You've got, just challenging things that just really push Wi-Fi to the limits. So dive in here and look at some of these. The warehouse one is one we see a lot. And there's a variety of different technologies we're seeing out there. We're seeing teleoperated forklifts. We're seeing the autonomous forklifts. There's just a really human crunch out there for labor and people to run these warehouse services and run these forklifts in the warehouses. And so this is one example we've got of a customer who's using private 5G inside the warehouse, and they've got a teleoperated forklift. So they take an existing normal human forklift, they retrofit it with some sensors and cameras and drive-by-wire system. But again, they're just modifying that existing traditional forklift, and they're putting a BR1 Mini on it, and they're using that to connect it to that private 5G, private LTE inside the warehouse. And then remotely over the internet at home, they've got a driver. And that guy's sitting on the internet using a BR1 Pro 5G connected to his landline internet, connected to a cellular internet. So he's got speed fusion all the way back to the warehouse, and they can just fill jobs for that driver. So he can sit there at his comfortable gaming chair at home, and he hops from one forklift to another forklift to another forklift just by clicking on things on his computer screen. So he can go pick jobs and move that operation really fast remotely and not have to be there on site.
Pretty fascinating to be honest. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the future's now, right? We're living it, and that's the cool thing, is these technologies are enabling that. And it's not just science fiction anymore. It's actual solutions now for people. I think this one's a good example too of where the technology ladder really allowed the project to move forward, right? Each step of the way, from just the simple connectivity inside the warehouse from that private 5G to the forklift, but then the speed fusion side of it out to the internet, that remote driver, right? All of those pieces need to be there for this to be a reliable, scalable, commercially viable solution. And we had every piece needed to make that work. So broadcast and events is another area where we see just a ton of demand, whether it's video production types of scenarios, or it's live events where you've got the general public in for big concerts or festivals or sporting events. Again, either those events are happening in locations where the commercial coverage isn't great, or there's just so many people that it's not realistic for the commercial networks to deliver results on the business side, again, for those internal use cases.
Yeah, and
So
events are tough too, Travis, because it may work perfect when you're testing it out, demoing, and then when foot traffic starts coming in, that congestion becomes real, and you have to plan ahead for that and be confident that the solution's going to work, right? And private LTE really takes a lot of those challenges out of play. Don't have to think about it anymore.
Yep, I think anybody who's ran a live event has the scars of that. Like, oh my gosh, it worked yesterday. What's wrong today? And yeah, that private 5G
people.
Yep, no pressure. We're just live. And so that was something I got to experience in person last fall with the Subaru Motorsports team. So they did a live broadcast at a race event, and we used private LTE to connect to the cameras, to serve as Wi-Fi hotspots for other users that had non-private 5G capable devices. And so we were able to integrate with this whole live video production environment so that when all the fans showed up, and again, it worked great on commercial cellular the day before, but we knew that wasn't going to be a reliable idea on game day. And so we were able to leverage a private LTE infrastructure and have that reliable video broadcast and that reliable internal uses all day long without having to fight with the public that was there. And so it was a great solution. But yeah, again, it's something you can see. It's not hard to imagine how this works and what the need for that is. Again, there's just so many use cases out there where you need that reliability either to deal with congestion or again to deal with the physics, the environments, right? The metal and the racking and all the inventory in warehouses. So warehouses are an area where we see people wanting to do that kind of hybrid where they got the trucks out driving in the field and using public commercial cellular networks. But then when they get back to the warehouse side, they want to switch over to that private LTE, that private 5G network. And so devices like that BR1 Mini, BR1 Pro 5G have that dual SIM, dual network capability.
Yeah, again, this is where the whole kind of ecosystem of Peplink products, software, services really come into play and are able to tackle any application. That seamlessness from going from network type to network type is really a difference maker, and the flexibility makes it easy.
Yeah, and these are devices that are certified commercially on these commercial networks as well. And so again, when you start looking at what device am I going to use, it's going to do all these different things. Again, we've got devices that are tested on the private side and they're tested on the public side as well. So they just bring that reliability and
and all managed from one platform. You
Yep.
can do anything from a computer anywhere with no matter where they're deployed or the application.
Yep. Yeah, and no matter where they're deployed with the security and surveillance, a lot of times people want these outside, right? They're on a camera on a light pole, they're looking out over parking lots, or looking at all kinds of environments where again it's just not going to be your off-the-shelf kind of commercial standard device. You need something ruggedized, reliable. And so whether it's putting the BR1 Mini inside of a weatherproof box, it's still got that rugged temperature range, so it can still survive in those areas. But we've also got the outdoor ready HD1 Dome Pro, which has all the antennas and everything built in, sealed for those outdoor scenarios.
Yeah, the product line allows you really to use the same manufacturer for all your applications. That allows the management, deployment, everything to be a lot easier and seamless, right? You don't have to get between different management platforms and different manufacturers themselves, because we have the whole portfolio to handle this.
Yep. So yeah, if you've got multiple user groups, you've got the public, you've got your internal users, you can separate that all out, have it all make sense with, like you said, one management system, one product line. Here's another scenario we've seen at airports. This is another, not that hard to imagine scenario, right? Where there's all kinds of people showing up and leaving, right? Hundreds of people show up at a moment's notice. And so the commercial networks just kind of have these ebb and flow moments where the business users there aren't going to always get the most reliable connection experience. And so again, private LTE, private 5G just makes sense, whether it's cameras or luggage vehicles or the airport police. There's a variety of different needs out there. There's kiosks, there's all kinds of different things that people want to connect in these environments. And some of them have a whole bunch of technical parameters around them, and some of them are pretty straightforward, right? Just get my camera online. But
Yeah.
again, that's the whole product line that we've got, and that technology service offering with Speed Fusion and other possibilities there.
Yeah, but something like this, you just can't risk something on the commercial side, right? You have to leverage multiple connection items or do something like this with private LTE, where you're always going to have that connection, that availability to talk to the devices, to the applications you need to. You just can't risk it on the commercial side.
Yep. So that covers all the content here. I see we've got a couple questions teed up right now, so I'm gonna open those up, and folks feel free to pile some more questions on there. So first question I see is, can we just back up and talk about how private LTE and 5G works? Does Peplink have a solution on the tower side? And so similar to how the commercial networks work, Peplink is a client device for these private networks. We don't make the private LTE core systems. We make the client devices. And so they'll call that UE, or user equipment, is kind of a technical term used in these networks. But no, we work with all the infrastructure vendors out there to get certified clients for their networks. And so we're not providing that tower side. We're just providing, again, just like on the commercial networks, that client side experience. I see one question: why use private 5G instead of Wi-Fi? So I've seen it firsthand, and I wasn't as confident going into it that it was going to really be that game changer. Because I've used Wi-Fi with high gate antennas, high power. I've seen Wi-Fi deployed at parameters well beyond, I think, normal office use, but the private 5G, private LTE just really does far exceed the capabilities of Wi-Fi in terms of coverage, in terms of roaming. It just provides a much more stable and reliable experience for those scenarios. So whether you've got, I've seen that in outdoor environments where there's no way that Wi-Fi would have punched through the amount of trees that we were connecting through, and private 5G, private LTE had no problem. It was super stable. It was super reliable. So just that the properties of the cellular networks, the cellular protocols, enables a much more reliable connection than Wi-Fi is able to deliver. So that's a big part of it. But Mike, I think like you talked about, it's that capacity, it's that private spectrum as well.
Yeah, there's a lot, the scalability too is a lot easier when you're doing that. Just think back, if you're in a big footprint or a lot of interference, that Wi-Fi is a difficult thing. You need a lot of APs or or maybe more than a lot, right? And with private LTE, it just simplifies it, and then you get the benefits of a cellular light network as well. So it really combines the benefits of both the Wi-Fi and the cellular to make one kind of premium network for you.
Yep. So I see some questions about the bands or operating frequencies. These will vary country to country, but in general, I'll take a step back here and just list them out here. So yeah, N38, N41, N48, N77, N78, N79. I mean, we're getting into alphabet soup here, but these are different 5G bands that are commonly used for private networks. And so depending on the country and region you're in, those may change, but those are the common ones that we see people using out there. And again, the devices we've shown you are all capable of those bands, so the N being 5G, the B being LTE or 4G. But if you dig into each of these models that we've shown here, you can go see, commercial and private spectrum, what bands they all support. But yeah, these ones that we've picked out on the lineup here are really the ideal models in terms of having all those private 5G bands. One question in an airport example, why would I need speed fusion when connecting a single camera? I don't think that you would normally. You know, if you need a redundant backup or there's a concern about the private LTE not having enough bandwidth, then maybe you would. But no, in most cases, like that airport example, we're just using something like that HD1 dome to be that single interface to connect what's probably just an Ethernet camera.
Yeah.
So that HD1 Dome Pro has that private 5G modem in it, and you're just going to plug that camera's Ethernet port into that and be that kind of pass-through device or pass-through connection. So normally I wouldn't see speed fusion in these deployments, but like that BR2 Pro on the airport police, there's a lot of cases where, yeah, they're going to want access to every commercial network and the private network at the same time for, you know, depending on the footprint they cover, where they're going, and just the critical nature of what that person is doing versus that single fixed camera.
There still are benefits though, you know, the simplicity of setting it up and connecting through PepVPN, right? Or the speed fusion, the access you get behind the Peplink router from in control within touch, especially for security camera and things like that. So even when one connection, you can see benefits. It just may not have that multi-WAN seamless benefits that you see a lot of times in Peplink deployments.
Yeah. Another question about the airport. I see, why would I need 5G on a luggage cart? I'm not telling you you do. That's just an example. That's up to customers. They can put the BR1 Mini there as well. That's really a deployment of a customer specific thing. It could go either way on that. You know, and some vendors it's 5G only, and some vendors do a mix 5G and 4G. So sometimes it has to be one or the other, and sometimes it really is just up to the project requirements. So I see a question about having 35 locations and kind of difficult access to internet at all those locations. Would this be a great solution? I would say private 5G might not be the fit for that, because you're distributed so much, you would have to have private 5G infrastructure in those locations. But we do have the integrated Speed Fusion Connect 5G and LTE, which is just commercial cellular data, but in a pooled multi-carrier plan. And so that I think would be a good fit, because then, you know, you don't know T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, which network you're going to need at each 35 locations. But yeah, I think that's basically separate from the private 5G side. I see another question about the private LTE discount or promotion there. Valid deal registration required. So to get that discount or promotional price, yes, you need to have a valid deal registration through Peplink. So that's just your ticket to get that discount, basically, is having that approved deal reg.
Yeah, and if that's something you're not used to doing or don't know how, reach out to a distributor. They'll help you with that every step of the way and help you get that approved.
Yep, absolutely. I see a question that's simple but hard to answer. Dwayne, what kind of cost is involved in putting up one private LTE? So we see different pricing models, dramatically different pricing models from vendors on the infrastructure side. There's vendors like Amazon that's doing private 5G, private LTE, and they're pricing it a lot like the AWS format, where you pay per the hour. And so that's a format that is going to be really helpful for a lot of people, and it's going to be probably not helpful for some people too. And so that's one way we see it being done, so that the upfront cost is pretty low. But on the other side of it, we see people deploying it as, you know, more like a traditional Wi-Fi investment, where it's infrastructure and they're paying for the deployment and the ongoing maintenance of it. And we also see kind of in the middle where vendors are standing it up as a service, and it's more of a capability that somebody's bringing in as a managed service for the end customer. So it can vary a lot, is the short answer.
A few more questions here, Travis.
So is there any benefit to having a device specifically made for private LTE? It depends. Of course, you need to have those private LTE frequencies and capabilities on there. And so that's your baseline, right? If you don't have that, it's not going to do anything for you in this case. Beyond that, again, it's that vendor testing. So you've got a handful of companies that really are the major players in that private LTE infrastructure side. And so you know, if that device is going through that testing, that's definitely an advantage or a benefit, because again, they're going to know that it works well in these commonly deployed scenarios. Beyond
And to
that,
me, yeah,
go
to
ahead.
me, Travis, for Peplink specifically, you know, I just don't think there is a value to have a private LTE only type of device, because that limits you then to the capabilities Peplink can bring from the multi-WAN scenario, the seamless failover for different applications, right? If you want to integrate different things, some of those, you know, what Peplink brings to the table, and having that kind of ability to do the commercial side, the Wi-Fi side, but also the private LTE side, really brings a lot of benefits. And you're not losing anything if you only use it for the private LTE, right? So the
Yeah.
flexibility again makes, and the way that Peplink works and the technology they have, make sense to have it all combined and not just one device.
Yeah, you may deploy Peplinks all the time on commercial networks and never deploy them on private networks, but it's capable of it. So it doesn't take anything away from you. You don't have to use it in that way, but you can. And same way going the other side is, you know, you may only deploy these as private LTE connections and never use the commercial capabilities of it. But either way, it's that same global skew. And so it's, you know, just a consistent product in that sense too. It's available and it's in demand for a lot of different use cases. And so for us, that helps streamline these models for, you know, being able to use for lots of different things. But yeah, as long as we're going through those baseline requirements of, you know, having the capabilities and having that interoperability testing, I think those are the real benefits, and you don't need a dedicated product for that. I see one question saying private LTE is not available in their market yet, but they use private APN SIM cards from the commercial networks with no internet access. And so that's a common middle ground, or I guess stepping stone that we see, where it's kind of it's like a VPN almost on the commercial networks. But they said with that, they can't use in control. And so there's two ways you could use in control. Number one, if that carrier is allowed to open, or if you allow that carrier to open up outbound access, there's just a couple ports you would need to open up outbound to the public in control. But you can also run in control privately inside of that private network as well. So you can run in control in a complete zero internet environment, completely 100% air gapped. It never has to connect or touch the internet ever. And so you can download all your license keys in text files and load them in that way, so there's no internet exposure ever. So that's what we call ICVA, or in control virtual appliance. And so that is something you can solve with what we have out there right now. There's just a couple ways you might do that, but yeah, that's another one of those: talk to your partners, talk to your distributor to dig deeper into that, because we try and make that available to anybody who's got those scenarios. And that's a hard mandatory requirement for certain projects. Mike, I know we've seen that in a lot of different customers, utilities and government and service providers too.
Yeah, it's definitely a game changer when needed.
Yep. All right, folks, I think we've covered all the questions here. Yeah, thanks so much for joining. It's, you know, the space is heating up crazy. Like we said, we're having conversations almost every day, every week for sure, and we're just seeing more and more applications and use cases. So reach out if you've got questions. Reach out if you've got opportunities, of course, and take advantage of those promotions we've got there to get high quality, tested, ruggedized private LTE, private 5G devices out there.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Look forward to our next Pep Talk. If you guys have any ideas or topics you'd like us to discuss, please feel free to give us some suggestions. We're always looking for ideas, but we'll see you next month.
Thanks again, folks.
Take care.